both. They have really strong income and really good financial habits. So if you can income max, you're literally going to be brutalizing finances. Next up on the list is career maxing. And I don't think this one gets talked enough about when it comes to personal finances. There's like this big wave of people right now who hate on everyone who has a 9 to 5 and not like 14 side hustles. But I truthfully think a 9 to 5 is one of the best wealth building tools you could ever have. And everyone wants to talk about stocks or side hustles, saving money, but your career is probably going to be the biggest wealth building tool that you have for the next 30 to 40 years. And career maxing is essentially just focusing on becoming as valuable as possible. Once again, learning new skills, taking on more responsibility in a smart way, networking, finding mentors, and switching companies when it makes sense. And a lot of people spend hours like researching investments that might make them a few $100s a year while completely ignoring the thing that could increase their income by like 10, 20, $50,000 a year. So if you're in your 20s, there's a really strong argument that focusing on your 9 to 5 can and will provide you a higher return than almost anything else you can do financially. So this is a great financial maxing tool.
This summer, the cup is bigger than ever, and DraftKings has you covered wherever you live. Every match.
Next up is optimization maxing. This is when you become obsessed with optimizing every single financial decision in your life. So you're basically spending 3 hours doing research on which credit card gives you that extra 1% cash back. You're moving money between like 5 different accounts, trying to earn a little bit more interest where you can. You're spending a little bit more time tweaking your budget and actually making true financial progress. And don't get me wrong, optimization has its place. Like you should absolutely take advantage of things like employer matches, tax advantage accounts like a Roth IRA, high yield savings account, and just other easy financial wins. But a lot of people end up spending way too much time on this. Like they end up getting so focused on squeezing out an extra $20 a month that they completely ignore the big things that actually move the needle, like income, investing, career growth, savings rate, etc. And once you've handled the major financial levers, then at that point, in my opinion, is the time to start optimizing. So this in general, I would say this is like min-maxing. Like it's not really doing a lot, but it can potentially save you an extra 20 to 30 bucks a month. Next up is debt maxing, and this is when someone convinces themselves that because some debt can be useful, they end up thinking that actually move the needle, like income, investing, way too much time on this. Like they end up getting so focused on squeezing out an extra $20 accounts like a Roth IRA, high yield savings gives you that in your life. Is optimization maxing. This is when you become obsessed with optimizing every single financial decision in your life. So you're basically spending 3 hours doing research on which credit card gives you that extra 1% cash back. You're moving money between like 5 different accounts, trying to earn a little bit more interest where you can. You're spending a little bit more time tweaking your budget and actually making true financial progress. And don't get me wrong, optimization has its place. Like you should absolutely take advantage of things like employer matches, tax advantage accounts like a Roth IRA, high yield savings account, and just other easy financial wins. But a lot of people end up spending way too much time on this. Like they end up getting so focused on squeezing out an extra $20 a month that they completely ignore the big things that actually move the needle, like income, investing, career growth, savings rate, etc. And once you've handled the major financial levers, then at that point, in my opinion, is the time to start optimizing. So this in general, I would say this is like min-maxing. Like it's not really doing a lot, but it can potentially save you an extra 20 to 30 bucks a month. Next up is debt maxing, and this is when someone convinces themselves that because some debt can be useful, they end up thinking like all debt is useful, or it's normalized, or it's fine, or it's whatever. And now they are financing like a car, they're financing furniture, they're using buy now, pay later, still financing their phone, financing vacation, literally financing every single aspect of your life. And really like think about your life. Like there's a lot of things you finance on a day-to-day basis without even understanding it. And the worst part about debt is it makes everything feel affordable. So instead of typically asking like, hey, can I afford this $5,000 item? A lot of people think like, can I afford the $120 payment for the next 3 years? And that's how a lot of people end up making 100K plus a year while somehow still feeling broke. Now, obviously not all debt is bad. You know, a reasonable mortgage is whatever, certain business investments, low interest debt, sure, can make sense. But debt maxing is literally taking the idea way too far and using it to justify every single purchase you make. And now they end up debt maxing. And this is when someone convinces themselves that because some debt can be useful, they end up thinking like all debt is useful, or it's normalized, or it's fine, or it's whatever. And now they are financing like a car, they're financing furniture, they're using buy now, pay later, still financing their phone, financing vacation, literally financing every single aspect of your life. And really like think about your life. Like there's a lot of things you finance on a day-to-day basis without even understanding it. And the worst part about debt is it makes everything feel affordable. So instead of typically asking like, hey, can I afford this $5,000 item? A lot of people think like, can I afford the $120 payment for the next 3 years? And that's how a lot of people end up making 100K plus a year while somehow still feeling broke. Now, obviously, not all debt is bad. You know, a reasonable mortgage is whatever. Certain business investments, low interest debt, sure, can make sense. But debt maxing is literally taking the idea way too far and using it to justify every single purchase you make. And the more debt you take on, the less freedom you have. So if you're out there and you're debt maxing, you really need to start paying some of this debt off, because full debt maxing will absolutely mog your finances. Next up is credit score maxing. Look, the reality is, in America, having a good credit score is extremely important. It can help you save money on loans, help you get approved for certain things, whether it's an apartment or a car, and it can just make certain financial decisions a lot easier. And I'd say like once you're in a good range, like probably 720 plus, the difference between an excellent credit score and like a slightly more excellent credit score usually isn't life-changing. The problem is when someone becomes completely obsessed with their credit score and starts treating it like it's their net worth. So they're checking it every week and keeping little tiny balances on their credit card because they heard that boosts their score. And a lot of those people spend more time trying to go from like a 780 credit score to an 810 credit score than they do actually trying to build their savings or increasing their income or actually investing on a daily consistent basis. A good credit score, especially in America, is a good tool, but it's not really the goal. I would say like once you get it to a healthy level, work on maintaining it and then move to things that actually build your wealth forward. So I would say this is mid-maxing for your finances. Next up is budget maxing. So like if you know where every single dollar goes, you've got the spreadsheets dialed in, you got some apps on your phone that tell you when you're spending too much money, and somehow like you know you've spent an extra $4 today when you didn't need to. I think it's one of the best financial habits you can have, honestly. Most people don't have a spending problem, they just have an awareness problem with their finances. I think that's the most underrated part about a budget, is that it's not necessarily there to keep you from spending money, but it's there to give you more awareness with your finances. Now, budget maxing can go too far. Like some people become so focused on tracking every dollar that they forget the point of money in the first place, and then they stress over tiny purchases while ignoring like their bigger financial picture. So the goal of a budget isn't to make your life miserable like a lot of people make it out to be. Is to make sure your money is going towards the things that actually matter to you and are actually going to make your life better in the long run. So if budgeting helps you save more, invest more, stay on track, that's amazing. At that point, it's working. If you're spending 3 hours a week updating spreadsheets to save $12, then at that point, in my opinion, you're kind of overdoing it. But overall, I'd say budget maxing is underrated. This is great for your finances. Next up is frugal maxing. Now, being frugal is one of the reasons a lot of people build wealth in the first place. Avoiding lifestyle inflation and living below your means are two things that can skyrocket your finances. But at the same time, if you refuse to buy anything, you won't go on trips, you won't eat out, you won't spend money on hobbies or experiences or things that genuinely improve your life because you're trying to save every last dollar, at that point, in my opinion, it does kind of get in the way a little bit. Because like, if you guys didn't know this, the goal is not to pass away with the largest investment portfolio possible. The goal is to use money as a tool to build a life that you actually enjoy. And some people are so focused on saving for the future that they do forget to live their life in the present. And there's always a balance, right? Like I always promote saving aggressively, investing consistently, avoiding wasting money, but don't become so cheap that you miss out on all the experiences that make your life worth actually living. So for this reason, I'm putting frugal maxing in the mid-maxing category. Next is skill maxing. People in their 20s are trying to make so much more money without becoming more valuable. Meanwhile, the people who are consistently learning and building new skills, those are the ones who are actually setting themselves up for bigger opportunities down the road. And I'm talking about both financial skills and just general life skills. Learning how to invest is a skill. Learning how taxes work is a skill. Learning how to negotiate or sales or public speaking, networking, even budgeting, those are all skills that we have to work on, and no one's just good at it when they first start. The thing is, a single skill can completely change the trajectory of your life, whether that skill leads to a new job or a new opportunity, or just gets you better at being more valuable when it comes to your life or your career or whatever it might be. And unlike a lot of other things, no one can take skills away from you. People can take your money away, but they can't take your skills away. And the more skills that you stack, the more valuable you become as an employee or just a person in general. And through that, you're going to create more opportunities. The more opportunities you create, the easier it becomes to actually make more money. It takes time, but it does work. So skill maxing, this is financial maxing at its finest. This is great. Next up is saving maxing. And saving money is amazing. Everyone watching this video should have an emergency fund. You should have some level of financial cushion. That way, when life punches you in the face with a problem, you're not going to be stressed or anxious about your finances. Thing is, saving is a double-edged sword, because at the same time, you don't necessarily want $50,000 to $100,000 just sitting there in cash, earning next to nothing, while inflation eats away at the value of it, depending on your situation. So money sitting in a checking account does not compound. Money sitting in a savings account is only going to take you so far. And at some point, that money actually needs a job to start compounding and really seeing true growth. So saving money is going to be how you build that financial security, but investing is going to be how you build that true financial wealth. So while I think everyone should save aggressively, you should absolutely have 3 to 6 months of cash on hand sitting in an emergency fund in a high yield savings account. Saving maxing without ever investing or putting that money to work can actually hold you back financially. But at the end of the day, this is still financial maxing at its finest. Next is emotional control maxing. And most financial mistakes aren't caused by a lack of knowledge, believe it or not. They're caused by all these emotions that get wrapped up when it comes to your finances. People panic sell when the market drops. They buy things they can't afford because they're stressed. They gamble because they're desperate. They revenge spend after a bad day. They make impulsive decisions because they want instant gratification. And a lot of that boils down to emotional control. The person with the average financial knowledge and great emotional control will usually outperform the person with incredible financial knowledge and terrible emotional control. Because at the end of the day, we all know the blueprint for building wealth at this point. Spend less than you make, invest consistently, avoid stupid mistakes, and just give it time. The hard part is actually controlling yourself long enough to see that actually work. And it doesn't just help your finances, but also helps everything. It helps your relationships, your career, your health, and pretty much everything else you do in life. So if you can emotional control max, you're literally going to be brutalizing finances. So that wraps up my tier list on how to start financial maxing. I hope you guys enjoyed this video.
I did enjoy it. Holy crap, this guy's got a crazy tier list. Holy freaking crap.
Day 29 is completed. Listen, everybody, consistency pays off. That's the first sub 9 mile I think I've ever done my whole life from doing this.
Nice, nice. All right.
Isn't trading really just the same as gambling, except in the stock market? That's a
I have to learn trading, bro.
Now, I want to begin by doing the income analysis so we can kind of figure out what that magic number is for you. So we're going to start with just the simple question of what your current income is. Now, those of you guys already have a pen, pad of paper, you can write this down, and it's going to help you as we do the formula in a few minutes. So I'm just going to use this example of $2,500 a month after tax. It may be high for some, it may be low for some, but you can easily multiply it up or down to figure out what your ultimate retirement number is going to look like. So I'm just going to put this on the whiteboard here, and we're going to keep track of it. So $2,500 per month, and that's after tax. Okay, so if you're making $2,500 a month after tax, odds are most of what's coming in is going right back out with your burn rate. So that's how much you're spending each month. So I'm just going to assume basically everything that's coming in is going right back out because that's the way it was for me when I had a 9-to-5 job and I wasn't making a ton of money. And I think that's the way it is for most people. Now, I am going to pose another question to you, which is, and this is a question I had to ask myself. Would I be willing to reduce my burn rate and spend less money in order to escape the 9-to-5 grind sooner? So that's kind of a question that everyone asks at a certain point when they're getting maybe closer to retirement. Do I work an extra 5 years to make a little bit more money so I can spend more in retirement, or do I just want to be done with this job so I can retire sooner? Now, the way it was for me when I had a 9-to-5 job was I just wanted to be done with it as soon as possible, and I was completely willing to take definitely take a pay cut because I knew that what I was going to be doing after the 9-to-5 wasn't going to be producing the same amount of profit as before, but I was willing to cut some of how much I was spending. So not going out to restaurants, not going to concerts as often, not traveling as much. I knew that that was a sacrifice that I was going to make for a limited period of time so I could reduce the amount of money I was spending as I got my new venture, my new side hustle off to a good start, right? So in sort of those early days when you're working on building a new cash flow, whether it's a side hustle or it's whatever it happens to be, we'll talk about some ideas as we get further in this episode. For people that are at the very beginning of that journey, who come to the table and they're saying, in order for this to work, I need to be making $10,000 a month. Well, now all of a sudden the barrier to entry is a lot higher, and the sort of benchmark for what success looks like is way up here. So if you come to the table and you're saying, well, my burn rate's 2,500, but I'm going to reduce that to 2,000, then all of a sudden you could be doing the same thing and say, well, I only need to be making $2,000 a month for me to consider this a success. And making $2,000 a month is a heck of a lot easier than making $10,000 a month, right? So the lower the bar is set, the easier it is to succeed. And then if you set the bar low and you succeed, you've got confidence, you're feeling good, and you're most likely going to double down, scale into it, and likely the profits will increase over time. But when you set the bar too high at the beginning, that you set yourself up to fail, essentially. You get demotivated, you get depressed, you're like, I'm never going to hit this optimistic, crazy goal, and so you practically give up before you even had a chance to see the thing through. So keeping your burn rate as low as possible is really important, no matter when you want to escape the 9-to-5 grind. But if you want to do it sooner, then you're most likely going to have to be willing to sacrifice and take a little bit of a pay cut in one way or another. So now that we've got our income and our burn rate, we're thinking about that monthly cash flow requirement. So in other words, what's the amount of money that I need to make each month to cover my cost of living? So we're just going to keep it at $2,500 a month or $30,000 a year. If it could be lower, that's great. If it's higher, I get it. For me now, at my age, my burn rate is a lot higher than it was in my 20s. I'm married, I've got kids. Life comes in, I've got 2 dogs. Next thing you know, you're spending $1,000 at the vet. So the burn rate gets higher. And this is the problem, that you get this creep where you get a little bit of a salary increase if you're working a traditional 9-to-5 job. You get a little boost each year, or whatever the case is, every couple of years, but then your spending goes right up to match it. So essentially, you're not getting the chance to really save in a meaningful way. And that's where I feel like we're kind of in a system where, especially for me, doing my 4-year college degree, the whole idea was you have to go to college. You go to college and you will get a good job. So guess what? I graduated from college into the Great Recession. The job market is terrible. So there aren't good jobs. Even entry-level jobs, there's people with 10, 15 years of experience applying to it. So now, as someone right out of college, I don't have as much work experience. I don't look as good against that candidate. I can't get a job. But I sure as heck have to pay those student loan bills, right, with interest. So now, because you have to pay those bills, you feel like I need to get a job immediately, even if it's not as good of a job as I'd like. So then you end up settling for not as good. And then you're afraid to switch jobs because if you switch too soon, your resume looks like you're jumpy. So you end up just sort of stuck, perpetually being held down. And I feel like, that's just not a way to live. And so in this episode, my hope is that I can sort of shine the light on a possible alternative path. And I think what I ended up taking was an alternative path, and it was through the pressure of graduating from college during the Great Recession. I was fortunate that I had a job going into the Great Recession, so I already was working a 9-to-5 job at that point. So, but the reality for me was that I knew that job was going to end because business wasn't going well for them. So anyways, back to your monthly cash flow requirement, $2,500 a month, $30,000 a year. So let's just use that for example. So if that's how much you need, then in order to retire, there's really 2 options. The first option is you have enough money saved to draw out $2,500 a month. And the second option is that you somehow find a second way or a better way of producing $2,500 a month. We're going to talk about that in a second. But the first one is figuring out that magic number. So I'm going to hide my video here so you can see the whole thing. So I'm going to use the rule of 4%. This is a guideline of the maximum safe withdrawal rate from a retirement account. It's been considered safe to withdraw up to 4% per year from an account without significantly decreasing the principal amount. How is that possible? You're taking out 4% a year. Of course, the principal's going to go down. Well, this is due to the average historical growth rate, which is 8.8%, when a portfolio is invested in 60% stock and 40% bonds. So if you're growing 8.8% and you're only taking out 4% a year, then you're really only taking out a little bit of the growth. So the principal doesn't decline. So to know the amount of money you would need saved in order to escape 9-to-5 grind, just based on this 4% annual withdrawal from the savings account, from the investment account, the way you calculate this is you take your monthly cash flow requirement and you multiply it by 300. So 2,500 times 300 is $750,000. Times 4% is $30,000. Divided by 12 is 2,500 a month. So now all of a sudden we've got our head around this number, $750,000. Now, if you said, well, Ross, my burn rate's not $2,500 a month, it's $5,000 a month. I need $5,000 a month. Okay, so times 300. So 5 times 3 is 15. So that's $1.5 million. All right. So if it's 10,000, then all of a sudden 10,000, you have $3 million. So the math is fairly simple. It's just multiply your monthly burn rate times 300. But these are huge amounts of money. Okay, so if you've been able to save, $750,000, $1 million, $2 million, then, you're in good shape. And this is the way most people think about retirement. Is I'm just going to save a little bit each month, from each paycheck that comes out. I'm just going to save, whatever it is, $100. So $100, basically $200 a month over the course of 30 years. And yes, your account will certainly grow, but the goal there would be $750,000, give or take. And it's going to take you 30 years to get there. Right? And of course, we don't know what the cost of living is going to be like in 30 years. It may be higher than it is today. Well, certainly will be, but we don't know by how much. So, all right, you don't have $750,000 sitting in the bank. I get it. All right, so now let's return to that monthly goal of $2,500. If I can produce this passively, right, from $7,500 in the bank, that's great, obviously. But is there a way that I can produce it through more active measures while still not being stuck to a 9-to-5 grind? So now we kind of have two extremes. We're trying to make $2,500 a month. And on the one hand, you can make it working 40 hours a week at the 9-to-5 grind. 40 hours a week, you're trading a lot of your time for money, but that's the rate. Or from $750,000 in an investment account. So is there something in between that can earn you that $2,500 a month at a higher rate? And that's the puzzle that ultimately we're trying to figure out right here. So the way I look at this is it's all about trading time for money. So with a traditional 9-to-5 job, you're trading your time for money, and the money is from your employer. But they, in turn, need to produce a profit from your wages to cover their overhead and then produce a profit margin. So what essentially I realized was that when I was working down in New York City, I was getting paid $18.50 an hour, approximately, right? I was working 50 hours a week, 200 hours a month. So I'm working long hours, $18.50 an hour. Now, the bottom-line job, you can still do a lot of these things. So online marketplace selling, all right? I've talked about this before. I had my eBay account. I was selling things on eBay. I was selling things on Craigslist. You can sell things on Facebook Marketplace, Amazon, Etsy, whatever. I was telling this just to my son the other day. I was like, when you learn how to fix things, you have a skill that you'll always have. So you can go buy a free lawnmower, pick up a free lawnmower that doesn't work. You fix it, you resell it for $50. Boom, you just traded your time for money, right? So you owner, including trading and investing, ultimately, all of which I've looked at in very
Unlock the world's largest, most liquid financial